Hmm.
Hello, Aleksejs. Hi, how are you?
Very good, thank you. Good evening, good afternoon.
Good afternoon at your end. It's good evening over here, actually. It's evening time over here. First of all, thank you so much for accepting my invite. A pleasure to have you. Yeah, it's your first time on our podcast, and our audience would love to hear about you. Tell us about yourself, how it whole journey started, and then we will come towards our topic.
Wonderful. So thank you, first of all, for having me with you. It's a very interesting conversation in front of us, I believe. And so for myself, so my name is Alexis. I've been all my life in data, so more than 30 years now in data. Started with some basic ERP development and then moved to Oracle Tech. Back then in 90s, the Oracle was very cool. So with the first data warehousing and BI and this analytical processing and whatsoever. So I did a lot of warehousing. I did some billing system migration stuff in telecom business later on. Eventually moved to Accenture to get also consultancy background. And Accenture took me to Microsoft. And so I've spent then 16 years at kind of data at Microsoft, building the first data foundations, first data platform at Microsoft, and then eventually becoming data strategy and AI lead for EMEA region in Microsoft. This story was kind of super interesting because the times were the right and the data start to be appreciated. So
Mhm.
I wrote a book about this. It's called Data Management Strategy at Microsoft, where we basically captured that whole journey,
Mhm.
how this small American enterprise became really big on data.
Yeah, yeah. True, true, true. Awesome, awesome. So it's pleasure to get someone who is really from data, as you mentioned, data warehousing. I really love to hear this word. Nobody talks about it anymore. When I say nobody talks about it, people want to run away from data modeling, right? And when you are in a data modeling is everything to start with. But nowadays, I would say that I normally blame vendor companies because everything goes on cloud. The less modeling you do, the more processing you will gain, right? So everything goes on to how much you consume, right? But let's quickly jump onto our topic, which is digital twin of CDO. When you proposed this topic, I was very amazed, and it's a new topic, never heard about it. I
Mm.
think people hardly know what is digital twin, but I think in the world of agentic AI, digital twin is going to play a big role, huge role, I think. But still, people are not there. But when you said digital twin of CDO, that really, I really raised my eyebrows, right? Someone want to talk about it. Okay, I think floor is all yours. Do remember that I am a solution architect, and I'll be throwing a lot of questions on it because CDO is my one of the best topic. I really like this topic, and we are going to discuss a lot. Tell us about this topic.
Yeah, so let's have this in a very conversational format, of course. When I quit Microsoft, I had this idea of kind of creating a virtual copy of myself.
Hmm.
So I thought through the whole journey, this 16 years at the company, seeing the whole build up of data capabilities, platforming ways, data engineering, ingestion, data management routines, introducing governance, doing the analytics work, doing the data products. So driving the business understanding, like, what we want to achieve with data for the business. Yeah. So let's say Microsoft never had truly a data strategy besides just satisfying, the business needs. And so these business needs were absolutely instrumental. And so, I felt like, hey, I learned so much. How do I digitalize this knowledge? So like, how do I put this in front of my peers, the people who would be interested in this as a knowledge, but also in, kind of application of this knowledge. So it's not a pure knowledge, but it's this type of a opportunity to take it in, apply in your context, right? In your work, in your position, in your role. So how can you play with this? And I was absolutely obsessed with this idea. And then I realized it's very difficult to do it alone. And so I've joined now the company which was created a little bit before that, Data Masterclass. And
Okay.
so now we are, as a part of the data masterclass, we seeing really it's developing, right? So we're using actively all the materials which we create for our events, for our trainings, for our presentations, for our advisory with the members. So all these materials we are digitalizing and we're using AI to create that common theme, in this common opportunity to tap into that knowledge. And so I'm very hopeful that eventually we will reach that stage which I originally imagined. And there's a digital copy of Aleksejs as the CDO, and it's available for our members, for anyone else to have an interaction with, right? And to tap into the not only into that kind of formalized knowledge, but into this intelligence which comes along with the reuse of the knowledge, right? So you play it in your situation. You say, hey, I ask you, how do I, for example, build some coalition with my stakeholders? And I get some simple steps. But when I have my personal context to this or some challenges which are unique to my company, how can I, blend them in and still get a valuable output, which is reusable immediately for my work, right? So this is type of
Okay.
success formula I'm looking for.
Which is great, actually. Actually, this brings back to the basic question of, because I'm a big fan of CDO role, and I'm sure when we are talking about CDO role, we are talking about Chief Data Officer, not Digital Officer, right?
Correct. Yeah.
So when we talk about Chief Data Officer, I think there's a big uh, confusion happening around the globe. There are a lot of people who says CDO, we don't need CDO because CDO is not producing what it he or she is supposed to. So CDO has become an IT department XYZ. So before we jump to one, I will go into details. So how do you defend this thing? Because if you are trying to create a digital twin of a CDO, it means you are 100% on a page that CDO role is required, right? But what do you say about CDO JD? I think if if if
Mhm.
if CDO is really playing a good role, nobody will challenge CDO. I think people challenge CDO's JD right now. So what do you
Mhm.
think? Can we discuss about JDs? What good JDs you think should be CDO doing?
Yeah, that's a great question. When I was asked by many people, like, what do you do at Microsoft in your data role? My answer was building bridges.
Hmm.
And so what I was really focusing the most is to build the bridges between what business leadership would need to have from data and how data capabilities could deliver on that. And then elevate this across the company, kind of promote the connections between different business units and different domains
Hmm.
of that kind of cross utilization of data, right? Because data always goes horizontally. And so it's not the thing which is bounded to one unit. We have maybe, different data domains, of course, with different focus, but overall, you see data is horizontal versus, the vertical organization of the most companies. So promoting this discovery of a data value and how it can power the business, this was the ultimate goal. And my whole focus and capability at Microsoft was to deliver on those business expectations. It's very different from, being a head of data analytics or head of data engineering or whatever it is, from more functional leadership. This is much tied into the business leadership. You just use the data as a vehicle to achieve those business goals. And for this perspective, it's difficult for me to say whenever the CDO role will stay as is. I think it may, more merge into the CTO type of capability, or let's see. But this notion of realizing the value of the data within the true business operations and day-to-day work, that's what I think is the essence.
You're right. You're right. Actually, let's go towards business strategy, data strategy, and nowadays there's an AI strategy, right? So I'm always uh, advocating that data strategy need to be part of the business strategy rather than it runs in on its silo. Now suddenly AI strategy comes in. Well, if you ask me, AI strategy is part of the data. If if you may allow me to say that. So what do you think about data and AI strategy being part of business strategy?
I think I'm sharing very much the same view. So for me, everything starts with the business objectives,
Hmm.
right? And, in Microsoft, we implemented a very simple way to validate whenever we are following those business objectives or not. We say that whatever we do in data as a very large data team should be measured in four currencies which are relevant and resonative for the business.
Hmm.
So we say like whatever we do with data, we either increase the revenue or decrease the cost. So it's a revenue play, or we increase the productivity. So the time back to our internal users, time back to the customers of the company. So it's a pure kind of productivity gain, measured.
Hmm.
Or the third thing, we increase the satisfaction of internal users or again external customers or partners, because satisfaction also matters and it drives many businesses. And finally, we work on risks, right? So if we are able to mitigate some risks, this
Hmm.
is another kind of dimension, similar to, let's say, financial dimension or some other things. So I say whatever we do should tap into these four currencies, as we call them, these four kind of value plays. And this is for me the epitome. So you go to the business and say, what is the business strategy? Like, are we about increasing our market presence, or we are doing acquisition strategy, or we're growing revenue, or we're saving the costs, whatever. So this is what data should be able to deliver on by subsequent data strategy. And this, analytical or AI play, which connects them with data, it's just part of the story. Right? It's not a separate thing. You don't have, in my view, you cannot have an AI strategy which is different from, your business and data strategy jointly. Because AI is building up on what your business wants to achieve, how data is supportive of this effort. So that's the way to see it. This is why I surprised often that we see this, like a 60 pages data strategy document which talks about at the end which BI tool we should choose. For me, it doesn't matter at all, like which BI tools at the end we are choosing, because that's not what drives the business, results.
Actually, this topic is, I'm very happy that I'm having this topic in my podcast because previously I had a topic called CDO is dead. So people have those mindset, and we respect their opinion as well. They might have a bad experience, or they might have a experience which they never expected. But here we are here to have a session which says digital twin of a CDO. So when we go towards digital, I think we should go back to basic. Let's also bring that discussion into it, because when we are talking about digital twin, I'm thinking about agentic AI. When thinking about agentic AI, I'm thinking about small data products. When I'm talking about small data products, I'm talking about federated approach. And before federated approach, it was a centralized approach where we used to have a lot of enterprise data warehouses, right? That is how we all started with Bill and Mon XYZ, right? Now federated approach comes. When federated approach comes, as I just mentioned, small data products will come, which might be a part of Mesh, which can be a part of Fabric, whatever it is, that's the methodology. Now, when these small data products come, right, now the challenges start coming in. Challenges, for example, last time you had one big data warehouse. Now you might have small data marts. You might not even have small data marts. You might have hooks. You might have Papine Bridge, small other data models, right? And small data products will be there. Now, when we are going into that direction, we are giving an autonomy to the business, right? A business, you end up creating your execution teams, support and maintenance team, but follow this guiding principles. Now you come up with this digital twin CDO. Now I'm going to relate it. This digital twin, how it can play its role to maintain this federated approach, slash mesh slash fabric. How do you see this digital twin of CDO can play a role?
Well,
My apologies
let's
if
put
I
it
brought
this
so
way.
many things into it. Yeah.
Let's put it this way. So everything which you mentioned is totally fine from my perspective, and this is exactly what happens in majority of the enterprises. So this federation of effort, a lot of discussion for federated versus central, like what we really keep in central. AI, I think, made this new kind of a moment to review again the data mesh principle, yeah, from kind of AI mesh perspective. AI investments are expensive, right? And so you have to think like what you really keep central and repetitive and
Hmm.
kind of across your reusability, through the whole enterprise. And so the data was important for this with the data products and with marketplace, but with AI, it's even more because it's more expensive. So, but my point is different. So all what we just discussed, the decisions on this organizational setup operating model are made by people.
Yeah.
And so, from my perspective, the role of this digital CDO is to facilitate informative conversations between the people, the people who are in those lead roles and who are making certain trade-offs. Like should this be federated or should this be essential? Should we go with that kind of marketplace strategy or not? So all these aspects, they have to be evaluated. And if you plug every time in the expensive consulting opportunity for every of those decisions, it's becoming really expensive. If you learn on your own knowledge, well, it's a kind of a 50-50, yeah? So you may win, you may lose. So traditionally, we have a community for this. Yeah? So you will outreach to the community of data professionals, and maybe you get that really, neutral and kind of well-validated advisor in this. But I felt like if we're integrating a knowledge of like true CDOs in the past, which played different paths on this, and this is really well curated knowledge. The data really makes sense when it's curated. Yeah. So if we're able to create that curated knowledge in this easy digestible way through AI, we have this really super powerful tool. It's not like you go to GPT and you don't know where this information comes from. Yeah? Maybe it was right, maybe it was wrong. You may get a top advice from GPT, but this advice maybe actually failed, in the past. So this is what we're trying to say. Like we bring this human factor into this agentic AI capabilities, and we're opening this agentic kind of a CDO twin opportunity for data leaders, for business leaders to have a joint decision. Like how can we move forward more efficiently in our specific context, in our company, in our business.
Yeah. So if we go further into agentic AI world, correct me if my understanding is correct, if my understanding is wrong, that if you're talking about digital twin, you're talking about a solution built on agentic AI, correct? Okay.
Correct.
And I'm sure you guys are creating a product out of it, correct?
We're
Now,
creating this probably as an internal product first, just to help ourselves. We use actually already internally in Data Masterclass some of these capabilities. So we try to digitalize kind of everything which we do and put it into AI.
hmm.
So it's not yet the product, but it has this opportunity and eventually a vision to become a product which is used within our community.
Okay, now when we talk about agentic AI, right, we talk about data quality, we talk about uh, transparency challenge. So let's
Uh-huh.
first talk about data quality. I will come to transparency because a lot of people are confusing transparency with observability and visibility. For me, it's are three different things. I will learn from you as well. But tell me about data quality, because last time we had one big data warehouse, we manage quality at one place. Now we will have small data product, right? One workflow might end up creating five data products on the fly and drop it. How do you see your digital twin can manage that data quality?
I think the responsibility of managing data quality remains with the ownership, right? So these data products will be owned by, in your scenario, by different teams, federated, non-federated. So what I would expect from digital twin is actually to be very expressive and explicit,
Mhm.
mentioning the data quality needs to be there, right, before the data products are built. And if you think of this, like, for example, we created a data quality framework for data products, which says like exactly what kind of things we should be able to measure with every data product which we release. So the quality of the data itself, the certification of that product, the lineage, the ownership, the freshness. So many of these aspects which would be as a requirement, for a data product and how to build this in a gradual way. Yeah. So you don't push everything at once, but you do it gradually. So it saves you time and effort and make it more realistic as well. And how do you measure them afterwards? So this will be the thing which I would expect from that digital twin to deliver, let's say, on a question when people will ask, hey, help me to build the data products, right? Or like, what's the golden standard for data products? So this type of, frameworks with the defined criteria, with something which is very tangible. Yeah. So again, you get this almost like a template for your data product, right?
Mhm.
Then you need to apply. And because you, as with every AI conversation, now you have this endless memory, this infinite kind of a chat memory. So
Mhm.
you can always come back and say, hey, we did this, now what? Right? Or we did this and we face some challenges. So what is your recommendation kind of to overcome this?
This is a very
I think it
controversial
depends on
thing,
the
right?
role. Honestly, I think it depends on the role. And
Yeah.
in the role you play in this whole mixture of data disciplines. Let me give you an example. What we see from data masterclass perspective, and we oversee a lot of European companies which works with data today. I can be very honest and transparent. One of the best data leaders which we see today in these companies, they actually came from business.
Okay.
They came from non-data background. They came from commercial, from marketing leaders, from business leaders who took the responsibility of the data teams.
Okay.
So I think on the leadership, it's really as back to what we started from CDO perspective. It's much closer to the leadership role versus to the data role. Albeit, of course, you gain some understanding of how the data is produced, ingested, operated, whatsoever. But it's really closer to what you can do for the business with this
Mhm.
versus what you do with data itself. Versus where you go down gradually, already on a data product manager level, the role which would usually bridge, the business requirements of specific domains with, the work which needs to be done by analysts, by engineers, by data scientists. So this is you already have a mixture of expertise. Yeah, you can take the business people and kind of get them more learned about and upskilled with data, and so they can operate in that space. Or you can actually take the original data people, like data analysts, and upskill them in a specific domain knowledge. And so they become then, more knowledgeable what exactly the main needs are and how they translatable into the data deliverables. So this is already a mixture. And then you go down into this more technical layer. So if you think about data engineers or, AI engineers, I think this is really where your data background comes first and your rest of the understanding comes as a second.
Yeah, actually, that is where I normally think about, like, if I correlate with your digital twin CDO, if hopefully you end up creating a product out of it and you give this to someone, let's say, and someone start using it, I think that is where I try to relate data people. Because once anyone is going to use this, now let
Hmm.
me bring my question transparency. Now when it will behave automatically. So my perspective is, if you do not have a data background, you might not know what digital twin of CDO is doing at backend and why it is doing it. Unless you are not aware of all those data modeling techniques, until you are not aware of all those data quality practices, because data quality is a very vast practice, right? Data quality can be a standardization of a date column, date field, which is coming from source. Data quality can be mapped with the interoperability issues. It can be mapped with the master data, and it can be mapped with the business rules, because it's a huge thing, right? So how do you see that is where I was coming. So what's your comment on to that one?
I think from design perspective, right? So if we think about this kind of product design on the back end perspective,
Mm-hmm.
the way to achieve a transparency here is to list out very cleanly, like which disciplines and to which extent we include into that virtual CDO, right?
Mm-hmm.
So here, I would say a lot about, data strategy, data governance, data management, all these type of things, I would be absolutely happy to include as much knowledge as we have. But I would try to go it way more lean and more generic per se, is when we step into the engineering space, because this is where you get more dependency on actual technology, right? So if you work with the Azure versus you work with Google Cloud or you work with AWS, it's a different implementations or a different tool sets or a different kind of combination of this. So, we can still do the recommendations, and I would still, let's say, embed certain recommendations into that digital twin. Like, hey, if you are on AWS, this is your recommended solution path when you go to implementing, governance or analytics or, data modeling, let's say. Or if you are on Azure, we would recommend, this and this and these things. But I wouldn't go too specific because, first of all, this knowledge is very detailed and very custom to the technology players, and it's very quickly evolves and it changes very quickly, right? So for me, the kind of positioning of that CDO know-how is on a top layer. So when you really operate as a data leader and you connect a lot of business things, and when you go that kind of next layer, where you're working as a product manager and you're productizing the data, and maybe also analytical products, AI products. So this space, I think, should be very well covered. And I would give with full transparency, like what kind of curated knowledge was embedded into the CDO model in this space. But I would stay away from this kind of very technical, very execution-driven layer. As I said, it changes quickly, it's very specific, it's difficult to be accurate in that space.
Yeah. So recently, Elon Musk, one of his company was sued, right, based on this transparency issue. I'm not sure whether that news is correct or not, but I've read that news. So okay, let me another question popped up when you talk about this digital twin CDO, because CDOs have kind of a different JD if you are at a vendor side or a product side, or if you are CDO at a customer end. It's a
Hmm.
totally two different hats to wear. So you are talking about your digital twin for which company
For customer side. So you are with, chief data and AI, chief data analytics, chief data, just chief data at your business, right? In your main company. It could be a central role, right? It could be a federated role. So we have a big enterprises where, we have this kind of domain-oriented or business unit-oriented chief data and AI officers. But I think it's still valid from like what kind of problems you are solving in every day and what kind of demand also for you is generated by the business.
Yeah, okay. So you are talking about the customer end. But okay, let me bring that flavor as well, that chief analytical officer as well, right? This role I keep hearing people is getting failed, right? Because chief analytical officer is talking about use cases and it has a conflict with business because business says, hey, I am a business, I know use cases better than you. But this role says no, because I bring my global practices. I know a lot of customers, so I bring that knowledge. So how do you see CAO versus CDO, and the CDO, which is the new CDO role you are saying? How do you see that conflict? Let's break digital officer as well, because these three roles, conflict each other. How do you see these three roles?
I don't think they conflict each other, but I think we need a balance, right? So at
Hmm.
the end, the goal is to drive the business, right? The goal of this whole enablement is not to say who is right, right? Having your local knowledge versus your kind of multi-domain knowledge or your previous knowledge whatsoever. I think the goal is to drive the company business efficiently. And so ideally, every senior leader brings those specific expertise components into this. So if you work with the business leaders with C-level, they usually will have their own very specific perspective where their main focus is, either driving the commercial success or, CFO driving the financial success or, company operational officer driving the operations excellence and so on. So you plug one more view into this, or CIO, for example, the infrastructure, right? The infrastructure, the IT, basic solutions and so on. So I think plugging this data component or analytical component into this is not in conflict. It's not also, anywhere overriding the knowledge which the business leader has, but it merges into this perspective which comes uniquely from the expertise of data leaders or analytic leaders. Yet again, for me, it's absolutely a pinnacle to get it in the support of the business. Yeah.
Okay.
you don't do anything on your own. Yeah. So maybe in CIO role, there is more of that kind of a network and infrastructure development, which is not so directly impactful to the business drive, right? So you say we still need an internet on site, we still need PC procurement for the people. So we need to align, of course, with the business goals. Are we, growing the business or are we shrinking the business? But there is maybe not less, there is not much of the direct opportunity to drive the business results, right? With either you have expansion of the network infrastructure, let's say, or procurement or so. But with data and AI, you have these opportunities where you can truly increase the value of the company. You can increase the value of those business processes with that data, right? And with these analytical capabilities, with deep data science, with understanding, what's your customer buying pattern is or what's their buying behavior is. And so this drives directly that kind of a bottom line and the top line of the business. So from this perspective, I think data is more influential towards the business results.
As you mentioned, products and domain, I think the obvious question from me next will be that because every domain has different taxonomy, ontology, and its own way of business. So how your digital twin will adapt each industry?
Surprisingly, it's not as unique.
Okay.
I will challenge this. And also, there was a research done once in I think a year ago, thinking about like how we will productionize different AI capabilities. And the research basically showed the following: like if you look on an average enterprise in the world, 80% of the function of the enterprise are very common. You think about HR, payroll, financing, CRM, ERP. This is a common thing. And this is why we also have a lot of common software. Like if you think about SAP, success factors running all around the world. So that's kind of a thing which actually is very common. And so you have some specific naming conventions here and there. It might be confusing. It might be in your local language, and things like this. But if you look at this from, that kind of balcony view and you take AI into the multiplier factor, you would say, well, it's actually very much the same. And we can nowadays with AI capabilities, we can understand very quickly like what is what in this 80%, right? So then you have a 10%, 15%, which is industry dependent. Like if you go from general enterprise perspective, you go into automotive. You say, okay, in the automotive company, you have about a 15% of the unique kind of ontology definitions because you're doing some specific supply chain, you produce, this automotive components in cars, and there is a lot of things which comes on top of that general kind of enterprise knowledge into this 15% of unique definitions, unique data elements, and so on. And then you look into the remaining 5%, which is truly something special. Yeah. So if you look like, for example, we have BMW and Mercedes as both automotive representative, but you still will always recognize like what is BMW and what is Mercedes. So they have certain unique things which makes them exactly Mercedes and BMW, not only in terms of visual appearance, but also how these cars are driving, like what kind of experience they're delivering for the customers, what is their branding positioning, So these 5% defines the difference. Otherwise, it's just a car, right? And so if you think now this from the ontology perspective, you would say 80% we have in common, and it's becoming common knowledge even for basic LLMs. 15% is the specialty knowledge, which will be covered probably by small language models built specifically for automotive. And then only this 5% is what actually is super unique. Yeah, and we have like various unique definitions and very unique data elements and so on. So if you look back now, I would say if your CDO can deliver out of the box for 80% of your needs, it's already good.
Good enough.
If you give additional learning material saying like, hey, I'm working in the automotive, we're using specific, knowledge, we have specific ontology, can you learn it in addition to your general 80%? Okay, when it's becoming operating even for 95% of your requirements. I think it's still very good.
So actually, finally, after 23 years in industry, I found a second person who is on the same opinion like I am.
Wow.
Literally, it's a big thing to say, but literally, you are the second person after, apart from me, who really thinks that domain does not matter for a data guy. It matters like 15-20%, as you mentioned, but 70 to 80% is same. That is why I end up working in banking, telco, oil and gas, insurance, Department of Correction. I've worked in all domains. Somehow people always challenge me and always conflict with me that how the hell you are changing domains. You should stick into the one domain and stay there. You need to learn XYZ. I always tell them that my last job was actually oil and gas for the first time in my life. And I simply jumped in, and within 3 months, I was able to understand what it is. Because once you are a data guy, you know that everything depends on the entities. Everything is entities. End of the day, 80% entities of everywhere is same. Is only 15 to 20% or max 30% is something which is different. But once you go in, 70 to 80%, if you can deliver from day one, it's already good enough. Thank you for seconding that one. And I'm very happy to hear that someone is on the same page. So
I think
going,
it's,
yeah.
it's good to look at sometimes, even from that kind of infrastructure perspective. My own eyes opening, very similar to what you just said, was years back. So we worked at Microsoft with sales and marketing, with finance organizations. So, pretty well defined, kind of a known to everybody enterprise functions. And when we onboarded LinkedIn, which seems to us, a separate thing, and when we realized, well, LinkedIn has absolutely the same processes. They have a CRM, they have a customers, they run after sales, and so on. And then even more, we onboarded the GitHub and realized as well, like, yeah, they have a specific product. But what we do is exactly the same. You have a customers, you identify those opportunities. Then you drive, market order to cash and cash to credit and so on. And then we looked into even philanthropy department, right? And you feel like, okay, the philanthropy should be completely opposite from the business perspective. No way.
Yeah,
You also have a customers. You also have a CRM. You do different transactions with them.
yeah, yeah.
And it's just a notion of like what kind of transaction you have, but the whole process is exactly the same. So,
Absolutely. The moment you go in, see, that is why I always bring data background people right up front. I'm a big advocate of that because I feel, unfortunately, data became an IT, which was not supposed to be, but it sudden somehow or the other it became an IT department. And that is where a lot of other roles start coming into it. And I'm a big advocate, again, I'm repeating myself, that data people has to come forward.
mhm.
Why? Because things are moving so fast and data has become a buzzword. Until unless a person do not know what potential or possible scenarios can happen, it might be much difficult for a person who don't have a data background, right? Just
Right.
suddenly we are so apart, right? We are meeting for the first time and we are on the same page that is all about actually entities. The moment you go into any organization, any data model, you start understanding the entities and all good entities in relationship with it. Okay, okay, awesome. So we have a time check of around 10 to 15 minutes. So okay, now if I go further into data modeling, if you don't mind, because there's a debate, a lot of debate is happening, data modeling is done. So what's you say about on that one?
Well, for me, it's quite simple.
For me,
Uh, and honestly, the way we took it, from data masterclass perspective, and I fully may imagine it's kind of oversimplification. But we build a simple matrix from the modeling perspective. So we say, okay, you have on one axis, you have the value of data, and you're elevating this value of data to data products from just data. So if you think about this, you have just data, and on the other hand of a scale, you have these data products which are curated, well designed, available for the use, and so on and so on. Somewhere in between, you probably have also something like, data sets, data assets, whatever you call it. But, it's a kind of half weight of the product. So it's more important than, just the rest of the data, which you don't care much. it's still maybe not as critically well managed as the data product. So it's kind of in between, right? And many companies have this type of thing. So on the other hand, so this is the value of data. So the other axis goes on what is your level of effort in preparing the data. So how much effort you spend on preparing the data. So if you take the usual medallion architecture, thanks to Databricks, you look through these brown, silver, gold, platinum kind of layers, right? And then you take it and see it exactly from how much modeling effort and data quality effort I need on every obvious level as I go through, from browns, let's say the raw data, you do first kind of improvements on the silver, you create a star schema on the gold, and finally you may have a denormalized product on the platinum level, which is immediately available to the users. And now you do the metrics of this, right? So you have this rest of data, data assets, data products, and you have this levels of bronze, silver, gold, platinum, and this matrix defines everything you need to know, right? So when you have these data products on a platinum level, it means it's a readily available set for either AI or for the users because it's fully denormalized, it has excellent quality, it's fully there, but you achieve it through your paths, right? For either your data productization path or your path of increasing that effort from bronze to silver to gold to platinum. Right? And so that's for me the whole answer. So when you take this view of this metrics and you apply it to what are your business needs, like is your business need for data is a platinum data product, then you have whole retrospective of what kind of steps you need to do to get it there. If you talk to our business unit and they say, oh, we're working on a data science effort, so we need a clean data set for our modeling, then you say, okay, so it might be a data asset on the silver layer because it will have significant data quality improvements already on the silver layer. And we don't need yet to run it as a data product because it's a kind of an asset which is just highly valued and used, but it's not a product. So you have it as a, silver data asset. That's it.
Yeah, so we need data modeling, you're saying, end of the day. As I always says that even it is a dimension modeling or it is kind of a semantic modeling, it is a data modeling. You have to follow one or the other way. Okay, let's bring, because we again have a time check of around 5 to 10 minutes. Let's talk about metadata because metadata is becoming one of the most, in my point of view, becoming one of the most important thing. I feel data is so much that terabyte is just a piece nowadays. Last time we were thinking MBs, now terabyte is just everyone have a terabyte data. Now we are people going towards petabyte, and I feel that if you keep processing petabyte of data, it might not be real time, it might be very delayed. So you have to generate metadata on top of it. Yeah, for the first time, you might have to dig it. But once you have gone through one time, you must create a metadata. And metadata, we know there are many kind of metadata. I will come to that piece. But tell us the importance of metadata in the era of agentic AI.
Yeah, for me, so the metadata is what defines the meaning of your data. Especially if we look on the business metadata, so we may have a technical metadata, the meta stores, but we may have also the most important aspect for me, the business definitions, like what it is in data actually from the business perspective. And so for me, this meaning is there, right? So if you don't have a metadata and you don't have a semantic layer, then I'm very sorry, but this whole data organization sucks.
True.
Because it will be very hard to extract anything of this out, right? Even if
People
it's
don't want to invest, right? Sorry to cut you. People don't want to invest. And metadata need to manage by data governance. Nobody cares about data governance team.
it depends on the positioning as well, right? So I think the most common failure in this space is exactly to elevate that technical need. Yeah. So aside if you're playing compliance, right? I wouldn't see that you will get any business traction if you go into these sophisticated things like, oh, we need a data governance function to manage the metadata, otherwise we're not able to survive, right? So no business leader will buy into this.
Yes, nobody will buy this. Yes.
Exactly. So you need that different discussion and explanation, like why would this matters, and also offering a great experience on this. So what I see another part of this failure usually is not to think about the user experience, like a data steward or whoever on the business side who will be involved into this metadata management, and simply, throw over them some complicated tool, with standard data catalog solutions, which to me are absolutely horrible, and try to push these people to do something there because it's kind of important, right? So these initiatives are dead to failure, in 99% of cases.
Yeah, you're right. Actually, you're absolutely right that normally when I talk about data governance and metadata, you're right, you have to come up from a different angle. For example, if you tell them that, hey, if you have a proper data, metadata in place, you may end up or you will end up reducing 80% of your reporting. They'll be happy, right?
Mhm.
If you tell them that if you have a proper metadata, business metadata in place, actually, people also don't understand that business metadata is about information modeling, business modeling, all that is business metadata. So if you have a proper business metadata in place, your next initiative will be maybe 80 or 90% much faster as compared to the first one. So your TTM of the next product will be much fast. I think if you come from this angle and explain to the business may understand. What do you think?
Remember my four currencies? You either have a revenue play, or productivity, or satisfaction, or risk.
Risk, regulatory,
And
yes.
so for everything you do in data, you take risk for currencies. And so this case would be, for example, very well qualified for risk because, we are sorting out the things which are important from a compliance perspective. But we also probably have some productivity gains, because there is less rework, there is less issues, to go reactively after, and so on and so on. And this could be calculated. And this could be positioned as a very good argument, like why we should do some work, because it simply saves company time and efficiency and also reduces the risks. That's it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Actually, your the third one, which is satisfaction, I take it into the revenue, and your regulatory, I take it into the OPEX. Because if you are going to crash something, compliance or regulatory thing, you are going to get penalized. That's your become cost. So yes, these four I agree on this one, but I normally bundle these into under which I agree. Either it is revenue, either it is cost saving. For me, it's only two because customer satisfaction means more revenue end of the day, right?
We created this separately to simply differentiate also between, the internal satisfaction, the customer satisfaction, the partner satisfactions, let's say.
Yeah.
But not all of them may be so immediately related to the revenue, but they still make sense from the business process improvement perspective, right?
Mm.
And so ability to automate something, like if you have a process which is highly satisfied by, let's say, the partner, when you say, hey, maybe we should tap into the automation because we have a solid process, right? So these kind of, it
Mm.
opens up additional opportunities, which when you are able to measure that it's actually successfully improved over time, it gives you nowadays also, like if you have a highly satisfactory process today, it's a great candidate for AI, for kind of
Awesome.
an AI-driven process.
No, this is great. Again, it was a great session, and I would love to have more sessions with you. Pleasure to be in this session with you because I end up learning a lot of things. Again, this digital twin of CDO is I'm very exciting about it. Once you make it a product out of it, do let me know because
Absolutely.
I
I
want to be
will
part
invite you.
of.
I will invite you to the UAT as a beta tester.
Yeah, I'm very good in testing. People really hates me when I do UATs.
Thank you for having me today.
Now, pleasure. Thank you so much. Have a nice day. Take care.
Thank you.